Well, it is a busy couple of days in murder trials. Dr. Ingolf Tuerk, went by Harry, was once a world-renowned urologist with a billboard over Fenway Park. Now he's on trial for murder of his wife, Kathleen. She went by Katie McLean, a spiritual healer and a mother of three. Now he says it was a drunken accident. The prosecution says it was a cold-blooded murder. And in this episode, we're going to break down Turk's courtroom testimony. We're going to explore the final arguments and ask the question that's dividing the courtroom, frankly, and the true crime world. Do you believe Dr. Turk? Hey, welcome to Profiling Evil, and I hope you hit that like and subscribe button as we get started. We're talking about Dr. Ingolf Harry Tuerk, who's been charged with the murder of his wife. Now, before Turk was accused of murder, before his wife's body was found in a pond, before the dramatic testimony that stunned a courtroom unfolded, Dr. Turk was the picture of success. He was born and raised in communist East Germany, educated behind the Iron Curtain. He served in the East German Air Force. Then he studied medicine at one of Germany's top universities, Humboldt University in Berlin, graduating summa cum laude. He specialized in urology. He mastered complex robotic and laparoscopic surgeries, and he eventually brought his talents to the United States, where he became a leader in medicine. Chief of urology at a major Boston hospital. He was respected internationally, so respected, in fact, that he appeared again on this billboard at Fenway Park. But was he really the brilliant, charming doctor that he appeared to be, or was he something darker, and was something deeper brewing underneath that facade? Now, in 2017, Dr. Turk met Kathleen, again, she goes by Katie McLean, on a dating app. She was a psychic, a spiritual healer, a mom of three kids, and the complete opposite of the disciplined surgeon. She believed in energy, the afterlife, and connecting with spirits. He believed in science and structure. They moved quickly. Katie and her kids moved into his home in Dover, Massachusetts, and by the end of 2019, while attending a medical conference in Las Vegas, the couple got married. And get this, at a drive-through Elvis Chapel. Now, Turk says he barely remembers the wedding. He says he was drunk, claims he didn't even know that they'd gotten married until the next day. So that's my first question is, do you buy this? Well, by early 2020, the marriage was already starting to unravel. Turk had secretly met with a divorce lawyer, and Katie found out. She filed a restraining order against him, and he was removed from their multi-million-dollar home. And then came the coronavirus pandemic. Turk said he was isolated. He ended up living in a trailer in Florida. Again, he'd been removed from his house. He was afraid and lonely, according to him. And that's when he got a call from a friend who said that his wife wanted to reconcile, wanted to fix it, that she missed him and wanted him back again. But this time, there were conditions with him returning home. She wanted to be added to the deed of their home. So apparently it was his home at first, they married, and now she wanted to be added on to the deed. She also wanted a postnuptial agreement. She wanted protection, security for herself and for her children, and Turk agreed. He signed it, and he moved back in. But then on the evening of May 4th, 2020, everything changed as Dr. Turk described the night in court like this. He said it was a peaceful evening. They had dinner with the kids, a game of life. They had some drinks together. They laughed. And later there was some intimacy in the bedroom. And then there were tensions that grew. He said it happened because Katie saw a text on his mobile phone from another woman. She became furious and demanded the phone. When she looked at the phone, she saw older texts from other women during this time of separation they had, critical messages that he didn't want her to read. And that's when, according to Turk, she struck him in the head with a glass. Now, he claims he kind of snapped. He blacked out. And when he came to, Katie was lifeless. So, a couple of questions here. Did Dr. Turk call for help? No. Did he try CPR? Not really. Instead, he loaded his wife into his Jeep, drove to a nearby pond by a home that they were looking at buying together, weighed her down with rocks, and he dumped her into the water. Then he went to a nearby hotel where he tried to kill himself. Now, let's fast forward to the trial, because Turk took the stand in his own defense. He admitted to everything. Yes, he strangled her. But he says it wasn't intentional and it wasn't planned. Now remember, he had a lot to lose if they divorced because he'd signed over part of the house, he'd signed a prenuptial or a postnuptial agreement, and she had protected herself. He was going to lose a lot if the divorce went through. He said he was afraid, ashamed, and intoxicated after killing her. The murder, though, was a moment of passion, not a premeditated murder. And for a while, he had the courtroom leaning into him. But the prosecution wasn't buying any of this. Now, you can catch his entire testimony at the end of this video if you'd like, but I'm going to skip it for now and get to the closing arguments. Because in those closing arguments, his defense attorney painted Katie as manipulative and opportunistic. Remember, this is the woman who was killed. The defense attorney said this is all about money, saying that she played him pretty darn good. He was drunk. He reacted. There was no intention to kill, according to the defense. The defense claims that the death was a heat-of-the-moment tragedy, not premeditated murder. In other words, the defense attacked Katie, the victim in this case, and made his client the victim in front of a courtroom. Let's watch those closing arguments.
Thank you again for your attention. The time you took away from your family, your work, to sit here in a courtroom for a long time and listen to evidence. And when you think about the beauty of the jury system, is that a citizen, when they're charged with a crime, has the right to have a jury of their peers sit in judgment on the case. And people come from all walks of life, different jobs, different backgrounds, upbringings, and you have your common sense, you have your life experience that you bring to that jury room when you sit down and you deliberate the case, and you determine whether or not, consistent with your oath as jurors, that the government has proven the charge beyond a reasonable doubt. And you heard His Honor explain to you what beyond a reasonable doubt is. Often used, hard to explain. He did a pretty good job on it as far as explaining to you that close is not enough. More probable than not is not enough. They have to have proof beyond a reasonable doubt to the highest degree of certainty in lives of human beings. You heard His Honor indicate that the government, anytime the government charges somebody with a crime, the government has the burden to prove that person's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, and that is up to the government. They determine what charges are going to be leveled against someone. They determine what the person is going to be charged with, and then the judge will give the jury the elements, the building blocks of the case, what the jury considers as far as whether or not they've proven a particular charge beyond a reasonable doubt. And the burden of proof in this case lies squarely on the government, on the Norfolk County District Attorney's Office to prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt the allegations. Murder in the first degree, premeditated malice aforethought, cruelty and atrocity, the worst thing we ever reserve on cases, first-degree murder, second-degree murder, murder, the intentional killing, taking of a life, knowing what someone is doing, having the ability to think, deliberate, plan. Whether or not they react, the government has to prove that this killing was not as a result of self-defense. They have to prove that it was not as a flow from a reaction to an assault that is the culmination of the plan. There's a plan here for sure. And the plan was on the part of Miss McLean to get that house, to get his money, and get him out. You can see a lot of these issues, you can see by evidence, not what someone says to you here in a courtroom, but what was in existence at the time. Text messages speak volumes because they show what's in someone's mind at the time that they send the text message. Photographs showing the scene is important because they show, for example, the shattered glass all over the bedroom floor in the front of the bed by the end board. The glass that's broken, that's up on the piece of furniture. The other glass that's broken, that's underneath the other piece of furniture. All of those items speak volumes as to what happened that night. That night, which was the culmination of the McLean plan, and again, you look to the texts and the evidence that was in existence. If he dies, do I get the house? If he dies, do I get the house? You saw that from the text twice that she sent to Mr. Keitel about the deed, the deed, the deed. Get on the house, get on the property, get on the property, you own it. If he dies, you get it. Height of the pandemic, get out. You heard, get out. Get out, go walk to your hotel. Leave the car's mine. No, it's not. Well, the judge says it is, as is the house. This is all about money, all about money. And she played him pretty darn good. Smart guy, obviously, in an operating room. Not a smart guy when it comes to real life. You heard the background, you heard his life story, you heard he learned English, taught himself English, rose to the pinnacle of his profession, specialized for a while dealing with pediatric oncology surgery, robotic surgery, all of that, wonderful. Doesn't mean anything. It's ashes blown in the wind. Because he had the pleasure of meeting Kate McLean on Bumble. And they went out on a date. A lot of people do. Many people get together as a result of that. God bless them, that's awesome. If they have a good relationship, wonderful. You think about it. He's living life large. He's got his Harley Davidsons. He's got his house. He's got his job. He's got his money. He can go out on dates. He can stay at home. He can go do whatever he wants to do. 2 years. 2 years they lived together. She comes in with her 3 children after a number of weeks, brings her 3 children into his house, welcomes them in. They lived together for 2, apparently, uneventful years. He's paying the bills, taking care of the house. She's got her 3 kids there. You heard evidence that during that period of time, Mr. Rocca, saw the man with the beard, father, he's trying to visit with his kids. Couldn't visit with his kids. Had to park his car out in the street. You heard all that. This is Katie McLean. Katie McLean's life. Then, all of a sudden, she applies for a wedding license or whatever, marriage license. Applies for the marriage license. Gets the marriage license. He's going out to Las Vegas to do a thing. We're talking about elderly medicine at the Bellagio. And he takes her along. Next thing you know, they're going through, and again, I don't have to hold up pictures and I don't have to have visual aids. you're sitting, you're intelligent people, you sat here through this trial, you know what the photographs show, you know what evidence has been presented to you, you know that they went through the Elvis drive-through, who does Elvis drive-through wedding? Well, hallelujah, we're married now. 5 weeks. 5 weeks. And then he reaches out to an attorney and says to the attorney, look, I want a divorce or an annulment. One or the other, I don't care. I want out of this. 5 weeks. She goes on his phone, you get evidence, she goes on his phone, she checks his phone, she's looking for girlfriends, texting, what are you doing? Who are you doing it with? Let me see it, give it to me. And she sees that deadly email from the attorney, Mary LaCivita. And do the math. It's a day or so later that she gets her bogus restraining order. Throws him out of his own house. He's now out. You heard the officer testify. He was a gentleman. He wasn't some crazy ranting person, angry, upset. Had his hands on his knees. He's like hyperventilating. Please, do we have to do this? What do you mean? I'm out of my... You gotta go. Okay, Katie McLean says, you gotta go, you gotta go. Now, she stays in that house. She has a place in Belmont, her mother's condo in Belmont. She could have gone there. No, she likes Dover. She loved Dover. The kids loved Dover. Because Harry went because they wanted. At entertainment, Harry builds the theater. He builds the swimming pool. You heard about the waterfalls and the TVs and the entertainment thing because she liked to entertain. He didn't say that like, oh, she liked to entertain. He said just like, Katie loved to entertain. He had an affinity. He had a respect for her. He had a love for her. He wanted her to be happy. He built all these things in the house to make everybody happy. Support everybody. No problem. Take care of everybody. Not a problem. Well, once the passage of time goes by, into, what is it, February of 20, he's with Charlie Lax. Friend who allowed him to come in, no problem. After that, he ends up for a period of time with Richie Kovitz. You saw Richie Kovitz, nice guy, testified, had to go to Florida, he lives in Florida. He let Harry come in to his condo with his girlfriend, fiance, Carla, for months. Harry stayed there for months. Pandemic hit. We all know that. We all lived it. We all know how horrible. Many times people were drinking wine at 11 o'clock in the morning. You don't know if you're going to die the next day. You don't know. Going to supermarkets, you get arrows telling you, go this way, go that way. Wear masks, can't eat, can't go to a restaurant. He, meanwhile, doesn't have what did the police officers say? Shelter in place. He doesn't have a shelter in place. Because now, after he went to Germany, again, he has his life back on track. He's got a job in Germany with robotic surgery. Katie McLean and her 3 kids are in the rear view mirror. He's moving on. He's getting a divorce. He's moving to Germany. And he's going to have a darn good job working at that hospital. Not to happen. Because at the height of the pandemic, he has to come back. He's back because of the presidential decree. Comes back to Massachusetts. What's he going to do? Goes to a hotel. Okay, fairly expensive. If you recall, maybe you have life experience during that period. You can't do anything in a hotel. You can't eat. You can't go to a restaurant. You can't do anything. So he's living in a hotel. He's communicating as time goes by with friends or family, and during that period of time, he ends up with Kurt Fansteel. Good old Kurt. His best friend. Kurt backed up on that like a poodle on a linoleum floor when I asked him, you're his best friend? Well, no, I'm not his best friend. I know the guy. I was friendly with Katie. I guess you were. Do you really think that Kate McLean had the intent to take this guy back into her life? Do you really think that Kate McLean wanted to have this old man back in her life and she loved him? She has her goals. She reaches out to him. And you heard the government jump up and down and ask him, well, you're the one that wanted to reconcile. Katie McLean has just had many friends. Wonderful, wonderful woman. You wanted to reconcile with her. And I suggest to you that his testimony was consistent because it's the truth. And he testified and told you under oath that it was Kurt Pfannenstiel that reached out to him initially on a FaceTime call with Katie McLean. Come back. Now, meanwhile, he's in Florida, right? He's living in a trailer in Florida. How the mighty tumble, he's living in a trailer. Got to get out of the trailer. You can't fall much lower than that when you got to get out of the trailer. So he's got to leave the trailer, and now he's got his problem with his head and his back, and he's got to come back up to Massachusetts. Well, Kurt comes to the rescue with that call. I love you, I want you back. He now sees a light at the end of the dismal tunnel. And during that period of time, he is able to make arrangements to meet Ms. McLean in New York, drive back. She's got Mr. Roca with her. He told you he was shocked, surprised, because that was the last guy in the world that he expected to see her with. You heard evidence that during this period of time that she had people in the house, and she's certainly not entertaining her friends. During this period of time, he's thinking that they're going to reconcile, but right up to the very end of that period of time, she's not in a mindset that she wants to reconcile. She's more interested in talking to guys and doing whatever she's doing with Kurt, and you heard the evidence. What do you think was in her mind? You think she really wanted to reconcile? No, she wanted the deed. She wanted the house. She wanted the security. We can say security. She wanted the security. This fool signs a deed against his lawyer's advice. He says to him, don't sign the deed. Don't sign the post-nup. What are you, nuts? There is no basis for alimony of 5-week marriage. You've been played. But he signs the deed. He signs the post-nup. Makes arrangements to meet with her. Now, he then is living in that hotel that we saw, that little room. There's a restraining order. She drops the restraining order. Of course, it's part of the plan. Drop the restraining order. She didn't care if he was in the house. Come on, come in the house. Let's go, in the house. You're able to go in the house. Brings his little ditty bag, goes in the bedroom. Beautiful, everything's great. We're going to live together. Things are going to be great. We're going to reconcile. Didn't know about Kurt. Didn't know about the text. Didn't know about that state of mind. During that period of time, they end up, and it's not easy to talk about people. I mean, the woman is dead. As an attorney, I'm not stupid. I know you don't, as we say, trash the victim. I know that. But it's the facts of the case. And if I was arrogant or obnoxious, or I was hard on a witness, don't hold it against him, because that was my cross-examination. But in my opinion, I did what I believed that had to be done to show you what the truth is and was at that time. So he's now in the house with her. He said that it was sex, sex, sex. Said that at his age, it was a little overbearing, but nevertheless rose, so to speak, to the occasion. During that period of time, I had texts that showed it's 11:45. Let's fuck. Come home. And whatever she said, with your wife. Do this with your wife. And interestingly enough, the round spot of blood on the bed that is hers. Yes, you have a text where she indicated on May 6th that in fact she's telling him I'm on my period, so you can't have sex. We're talking a week later. They had sex. You heard the DNA person talk? Yeah, that was her DNA. And 3 other contributors. My God, 3 other contributors. YSTR profile, male profile, in that spot, in his bed, in his bedroom. In any event, they have sex. He told you that night they had sex. You heard the DNA woman say, yes, If a guy is married to a woman or a guy and a girlfriend or whatever, and they're intimate with each other, yeah, of course there's going to be DNA in their hands or in their fingernails. This is not blood. This is not skin cells. It's touch or handler DNA from touching someone, rubbing someone's back, clawing someone's grab, grabbing their butt, grabbing their junk, grabbing whatever you grab, however you grab it, you're going to get DNA on your husband or wife's hands. But they run with that. That and the blood spot in the bed. Oh, you saw and heard. There's not one whit of evidence that she had a bruise about her face, her head, at all. No evidence whatsoever of any bruising in the area of her face and head. Of course, we have the government's pathologist who testified, and it's your memory, not mine. Very nice woman. Testified as best she could. She's probably overworked, had a lot of files, a lot of cases. And I suggest to you that she couldn't remember basic things from that autopsy. That's fine. She says, oh, there's subdural hematoma in the back of the head and the side of the head. Initially, is there any bruising? No. And then it was, well, subdural hematoma. Yeah, that could be bruising. Yeah, okay. Well, you heard Dr. LaPosada indicate that that is from the person being for a period of significant time prone over the water. Well, we talk about the water. That is what is called post-homicide conduct. What's at play with a jury is what was in the person's mind at the time of the killing, not what occurs afterwards. Granted, you heard him testify. He's not proud of that fact. He lives with it, but it has nothing to do with what was his state of mind at the time she smashed the glass, which you believe obviously happened, off of his head. You saw the photographs. You saw it's almost an inch above the hairline of the cut. He indicates that he is holding his hand and reacts with one hand. You heard Dr. LaPosada's testimony. There is no bruising about the head or the face. There's no bruising anywhere, actually, other than the neck. Bilateral, not circumferential, not grabbing with two hands. Dr. LaPosada clearly and unequivocally states bilateral grab from a very, very powerful man with huge hands, okay? Bilateral grab. Reacting. Both of them drunk. She dies. He knows. Is that premeditated? Is that cruelty and atrocity? A matter of seconds, Dr. LaPosada stated. Seconds. I suggest to you that he reacted. He was drunk. He reacted to the assault. He defended himself. He did not use excessive force. He reacted to stop the assault. Any one of you or anybody is entitled to defend themselves. And the beauty of the law is that the government has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he did not act in self-defense. They have to prove. How can anyone say he did not act in self-defense? That's a not guilty. He acted in self-defense. The circumstances attending that set of events that occurred, the government has to prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt he did not act in self-defense. The government suggests that, oh, this is first-degree murder. Second-degree murder, when you look at the facts of the case, consistent with the instructions that Zana gave you, is this a killing that occurred in hot blood, heat of passion, on sudden, adequate provocation? Isn't that all over the place? They have a burden of proof to you beyond a reasonable doubt that he did not act on reasonable provocation, did not act in a heat of passion, did not act because of the emotion of the assault, did not have the ability to form intent at the time. There's no intent to kill. There's an intent for self-preservation. You heard Dr. Zeisel talk about fight or flight. You heard Dr. Zeisel talk as a psychologist about pretty fairly standard psychological principles that all of us have. That little hypothalamus or whatever it is, that thing in your brain, tunnel vision, you do stupid things afterwards, you try, it's because you're nervous. It's the overwhelming fear, the overwhelming fright that eclipses your ability to think straight. That's what the pond is about. The pond has nothing to do with the circumstances of the killing. The killing occurred, she smashed the glass, after she told him to get the F out, get out of my house, and the deed was recorded that day. And he moved in that night, that day. One night. The evidence shows shattered glass. Do we have it? No. Where is it? Who knows? Probably a dump somewhere. Is that important to have a full, fair investigation? You heard, and you know, the cops, you can wind them up and they'll walk up to the witness stand and you can press the button and they'll testify and they'll give the right answers. But does anyone really think Kwiatkowski knew what the hell he was doing here? Testifying? He didn't even know where the argument took place. He stood up there and told you, I don't know. It's possible. It's possible it took place in the bedroom. Come on. Was there glass on the floor? I think I recall. What do you mean you think you recall? You're a chief homicide investigator on a murder case. Man's life is at stake and you think you recall because you get your check on a Friday? That is a lousy police investigation. And you know what? The other young man that came in and said, well, if it had red marks on it, I would have examined it. And I said to him, you have to know it's there before you can examine it, right? He didn't even know that there was a second glass. When the police investigate, as citizens, we expect they're going to have an open mind, they're going to do a good job, they're going to seize evidence, they're going to secure things, and they're going to do the best they can to be able to prove a case to a jury beyond a reasonable doubt. Didn't happen in this case. It was a foregone conclusion, but they knew nothing about text messages, did they? They knew nothing about the goings-on between the two of them. They knew nothing about the deed. They knew nothing about the post-nuptial agreement and the money that's paid. They knew nothing about the destruction that she rained down on this man's life. This is not a murder. You bring your common sense, you bring your life experience to that jury room, you look at all this evidence, you look at the time frames, you look at the deed, you look at the photographs, you look at the medical records. The medical records have the guy, the 226 blood alcohol, 19. You see the comment in there, suicide by alcohol. And you can make fun of the fact, oh, well, you know, it's superficial scratch. Anytime there's marks and cuts on somebody trying to kill themselves by not going sideways, linear lines, they're superficial. Post-convict, you can say that's superficial. He wanted to kill himself. He wanted to say goodbye to his friends. He wanted to say, I love you to some people. He did that with Kurt and some of the other people that he sent messages to. She played us. She was the devil. I love you, Harry. This is the end of a tragic human story. But I suggest to you, members of the jury, that when you consider Judge Hallel's instructions, ever mindful of the burden of proof, this man is not guilty of murder. Thank you.
But then the district attorney came in swinging for her turn at bat. She says that Dr. Turk didn't act in self-defense. She says he didn't snap. She said that he was calm. cool and collected, and when she was dead, he didn't call for help. He dumped her like trash. And then the prosecution asked the jury to think about this. How does a world-renowned surgeon who knows the anatomy of the human neck better than anyone claim that he didn't know that he could kill somebody by choking them? Let's watch the prosecution's closing statement.
He took her lifeless body past her children's bedrooms, down the stairs, placed her into the car, and drove her to a home that she and the defendant had once looked at to buy for their family. He took her body through a dark wooded area with thick brush and trees and placed 2 large rocks in her leggings, and then he discarded her in that pond like a piece of trash. During the course of this trial, you have heard that Katie was married to Stephen Rocca and had 3 children with him. After that marriage ended, she was briefly married to a man named Chris Foley, and then in November 2017, she and the defendant met online and began their relationship. You heard that sometime in 2018, Katie and her 3 children moved into 29 Valley Road with the defendant, and her children began attending school in Dover. In December of 2019, Katie and the defendant were married in Las Vegas, but the relationship deteriorated, and by early February 2020, Katie had obtained a restraining order against the defendant, who was no longer living at 29 Valley Road. The pandemic hit about a month and a half later, and the world shut down. The defendant made his way to Florida and planned to sell the house at 29 Valley Road. Both he and Katie were moving forward with the divorce. However, on April 17th of 2020, that all changed when the defendant reached out through his lawyer, John Hoffman, and requested Katie consider a reconciliation. You heard testimony from Vanessa Pettigrew and Stephen Rocca that show Katie wasn't sure about the reconciliation, but she wanted to try to make her marriage work because she loved the defendant and she wanted stability for her children. So Katie and the defendant worked out an agreement to try to help Katie feel secure in the relationship, which included signing the deed on April 29th of 2020 to give Katie half ownership in the house, and the 2 also established a post-nup agreement. You heard on May 8th of 2020, Stephen Rocca drove Katie to New York to meet the defendant, and she and the defendant drove back to Massachusetts together. You saw surveillance video and the reservation receipt from the Marriott showing the defendant check in on May 8th with the intention of staying at the hotel until May 17th. But on May 15th, 2020, that hope of reconciliation came to an end when the defendant killed Katie in their bedroom at 29 Valley Road. And for that, the defendant is charged with first-degree murder. The defense suggests that the defendant killed Katie in the heat of passion or in self-defense. He was under extreme stress from the pandemic, had just placed her name on the deed of the house, and snapped that night when she threatened to make him leave again. He also suggests that because Katie had texted with friends about her relationship with her husband, and because she wanted stability for her children, that she just wanted his house and his money, and never really wanted to reconcile. And that, coupled with the fear of being kicked out of his own home during the pandemic, is what led him to snap. Ladies and gentlemen, I suggest that is not heat of passion. It is not self-defense. It is motive to kill. And the defendant's text to Kurt Pfannenstiel after the murder is further evidence that the defendant did not snap and kill Katie and then instantly regret it like he wants you to believe. That text shows his constant and enduring belief that Katie was a vindictive devil, and it shows his motive to kill her, to get rid of her so that he would not have to go through another divorce and he would not lose his house again. I want to remind you about the defendant's statement on May 16th of 2020. It was 1 hour and 20 minutes into that interview when the police first suggested that Katie had hit the defendant. Sergeant Kakowski continues to suggest that Katie hit the defendant with something. He tells the defendant about the broken glass in the bedroom and points out the small abrasion on the defendant's head. It is not until then that the defendant adopts Sergeant Kakowski's statement that Katie had hit him. I would suggest to you that the defendant adopted this theory to minimize his culpability as he was confessing to killing Katie. A killing that was driven by greed. As we heard numerous times throughout this trial, it was his house and it was his money, and he was not going to give those things up. In those moments, the defendant was not overcome with emotion or fear or panic. He was angry. And he wanted to make sure that Katie was not going to get his house. And the only way that would happen now that the deed was signed was if she was dead. And so he killed her. I would suggest to you that all of the evidence you have seen and heard throughout this trial shows that the defendant not only had the motive and intent to kill Katie, but he also had the opportunity when he got himself back into that house. I would point you to the evidence in the bedroom, the shattered glass all over the floor, Katie's blood on that bed in 2 different spots. The photographs of the scrape on the defendant's head, coupled with his medical records that documented it simply as an abrasion. The lack of red-brown stains on any piece of glass that was photographed in that bedroom, and the small cuts on the defendant's hands by his thumb and index fingers, with the evidence of the defendant's DNA under Katie's fingernails. This evidence is not consistent with a single blow from a glass and a quick grab to the neck that caused death. I would suggest to you what this evidence is consistent with is a violent struggle. A violent struggle as Katie fought for her life in that bedroom. And the extensive injuries to Katie's head and neck described by Dr. Matthews are just further evidence of that violent struggle for Katie's life that occurred inside that bedroom on May 15th. Now I want to talk to you about what some of the defense witnesses said. Think about Attorney Hoffman's testimony and the series of emails sent by the defendant on April 10th, on April 13th, and April 15th. He was still committed to that divorce, and he wanted back in that house. And he wanted Katie and her 3 children to move to Belmont. And then 2 days later, he suddenly had a change of heart and wanted to reconcile. He wanted to make Katie and the kids feel secure. So he put her name on the deed, which meant that she was entitled to half the house if they were to get divorced. But also remember that becoming tenants in common on a deed means if one of them dies, the other one gets the house. Dr. Laposadas testified that Katie's death was a result of a one-handed application of force. I would ask that you remember this is a doctor who has not examined a body in over 20 years. Her demeanor appeared aggressive and argumentative as she was testifying. And I would suggest, as a paid defense expert, she had an agenda. And she wouldn't even answer the simplest question on cross-examination without pushing that agenda. Dr. Laposada also made sure to emphasize all the things that she did do as she considered the cause of death and the circumstances surrounding Katie's death. But there are 2 things that she did not do. She did not examine Katie's body, and she did not listen to the defendant's statement to police from May 16th of 2020. The statements in which he said, "I choked her. I grabbed her around the neck, and she was fighting, and I continued, and then she passed out." The defense suggests that this was an impulsive, knee-jerk reaction. Dr. Zeisel testified that people in highly dangerous situations can have a fight or flight response and can act without thinking. He gave examples of hurricanes, mass shootings, and being attacked. But he also agreed in those situations, you do not lose your free will, and you do not lose the ability to make a choice. The defendant, who I suggest appeared methodical and detail-oriented, testified that he was down on his knees, begging Katie to stop as she was yelling at him and then hit him with a glass. He testified that he snapped and blacked out. But he did remember that he grabbed her by one hand on the neck. He described her flailing and then they both fell to the ground, and he told you that when he came out of his blacked out state, he saw she was non-responsive. So he put her on the bed and started CPR. But it didn't work. I would remind you that in his original statement to the police on May 16, 2020, he did not tell them he was on his knees. He did not tell them that he only grabbed her with one hand, and he did not tell them that he tried to perform CPR. In his testimony yesterday, he also told you that he panicked and wanted to move Katie's body so that her children would not find her. I would suggest that the defendant took the methodical and detail-oriented steps to dispose of Katie's body in an effort to save himself, not her children. At times during this trial, the defense has also tried to disparage, embarrass, and blame Katie. But I would suggest that is not what this case is about. And it was meant to distract you from the focus of this trial, which is the death of Katie McLean. Earlier, Judge Halal instructed you on the elements that the Commonwealth must prove beyond a reasonable doubt in order for you to find the defendant guilty of first-degree murder. He explained that there are two different theories by which the Commonwealth can prove first-degree murder. The first is deliberate premeditation, and the second is extreme atrocity and cruelty. I submit to you that the Commonwealth has proven both theories beyond a reasonable doubt. When considering the first theory, deliberate premeditation, the first element under this theory, it's not contested. The defendant admitted in his interview that he killed Katie McLean by strangling her. He told you in this courtroom that he killed Katie. And Dr. Matthews, the medical examiner, testified that Katie's cause of death was strangulation. The second element is that the defendant intended to kill Katie. The defense suggests that the defendant did not form the necessary intent to kill Katie, and they point to his intoxication and also argue that he killed her in the heat of passion or in self-defense. When thinking about this, I want you to think about the defendant's own words in his interview to the police. You always have a choice. And I would suggest to you that the defendant made a choice in the early morning hours of May 15th to kill Katie. Think about his other statements during that interview. She was fighting and I continued. Then she passed out. He had a choice to stop as she was fighting, and he did not. In those moments, he made the choice to keep going and to kill Katie. And I suggest to you that is intent. Attorney Reddington suggests that the defendant was intoxicated and snapped and could not control his conduct. When considering whether the defendant's drinking that night played a role in his behavior, think about the meticulous steps that he took after she was dead. He carried Katie's body down the long staircase at 29 Valley Road. He placed her into her vehicle and drove her to a pond that he had been to before. He walked in the dark through thick brush and trees, causing the scratches and abrasions to his head, to his legs, and his arms. Then he placed 2 large rocks in her pants to weigh her down, to hold her body down. Then he started driving to Denham, but realized that he had forgotten his phone, so he went back to the house. He got his wallet, he got his phone, he changed his clothes, He locked the bedroom door. He drove those windy, dark country roads from Dover to Dedham without crashing, without getting pulled over, and then he parked within his parking spot. He put on his mask. He removed his wallet from his pants. He swiped his card around 5:30 a.m. to enter that building. He walked past the reservation desk, through the lobby, and up to his second floor room. Not stumbling, not falling down, not incapacitated. I would suggest he is quite the opposite. He is cool, he is calm, and he is collected. His clothes and his hair are neat and orderly. And again, look at that coherent text he sent to Kurt about his hatred for Katie. This text does not show panic. It does not show remorse. It shows motive, and it shows intent. I would suggest to you that the defendant's behavior directly after the crime does not indicate that he was in a fit of rage or so intoxicated at the time he killed Katie. I would suggest to you it's the behavior of someone who is in complete control of himself. He is aware of his actions and the potential consequences, and he took well thought out, methodical steps to dispose of her body and cover his tracks. Also remember the defendant was alone in that hotel room for 5 hours with a large bottle of alcohol that was half empty when the police entered at 10:50 a.m. During that time when he was alone in the room, he had time to think, he had time to reflect, and he had time to plan. Likewise, the defendant wants you to believe that he was either intoxicated at the time of his interview or was feeling the effects of his prior intoxication. He wants you to believe he was confused, he had memory lapses, and he didn't understand what he was saying because of his blood alcohol level when he was admitted to the hospital. I would ask that you use your common sense and your life experience when evaluating these statements. The Dedham police arrived at the hotel around 10:50 a.m. on May 15th and found the defendant, who was immediately transported to the hospital. His lab results from noon on May 15th show his blood alcohol level to be elevated. But remember, the interview with the police did not begin until 5:19 p.m. on May 16th, almost 30 hours later. Remember the testimony of Ailish Wilkie, who told you it was her job to protect the defendant, and she would not have let him talk to the police if he was unable to or if he was unwilling to. Think about the defendant's behavior in that interview, how clear his voice was while even wearing a mask, how he was able to spell everyone's last name correctly without being asked. Think about the testimony of Detective Gonski and Sergeant Kakowski that the defendant walked in and out of that room unassisted. He sat up in a chair throughout the entire interview, and he was calm and coherent throughout that entire interview. All of these details, coupled with the police being calm and patient and allowing the defendant the time he needed, point to the defendant's statement being knowing, voluntary, and intelligent. The third element, whether the defendant decided to kill Katie after a period of reflection, Judge Halal instructed you that that period of reflection can be just a few seconds or minutes. I would suggest to you that the defendant's words to the police on May 16th that Katie fought and he continued, paired with the small cuts around his thumb and his index finger and his DNA found under Katie's fingernails, indicate she was fighting him. And I would suggest it shows that he knew exactly what he was doing when he continued to strangle her as she was fighting for her life. The defendant's own words indicate he had time to reflect about his actions and those consequences. She was fighting and he kept going until she was dead. Also think about the fact that the defendant is a renowned surgeon. We heard a lot about that through this trial. He is trained to react under pressure. He has training on the human anatomy. But, as he said in his original statement to the police, he admitted he did not try to resuscitate Katie, and he did not call 911. Instead, he removed her body from the house. He weighed her down with 2 large rocks, and he sunk her body in a murky pond. Ladies and gentlemen, I would submit to you that all of that is deliberate premeditation. The second theory of first-degree murder that you must consider is extreme atrocity and cruelty. As with deliberate premeditation, we know the defendant killed Katie. And when considering the second element, his intent, again, remember the defendant has substantial medical training as a doctor. I would suggest that any reasonable person would know that cutting off someone's air or blood supply could result in death. The defendant, with his significant medical training, would have known that wrapping his hands around Katie's neck and continuing to squeeze as she was fighting him would reasonably cause her death. And during his testimony, he acknowledged that. The third element, that the killing was done with extreme atrocity and cruelty. When thinking about this element, I want you to remember the defendant's statements during his interview, as well as Dr. Matthews' testimony. I would suggest that the defendant continued to strangle Katie while she was fighting shows his indifference to her suffering. Think about the testimony of Dr. Matthews and the extensive injuries that she detailed, the petechia in Katie's eyes, the external injuries to her neck, the internal injuries to her head and her neck, and her broken hyoid bone. Remember where Dr. Matthews said the hyoid bone was, placed within the neck muscles, and the fact that Katie's hyoid bone was fractured. And the hemorrhages in her neck were 4 layers deep. Dr. Matthews agreed that it would take significant force for those injuries to occur, and that all of Katie's injuries occurred before her death. That, coupled with the injuries to the defendant's hands and his DNA underneath her fingernails, shows that she was conscious and suffering as the defendant was squeezing the life out of her. I would suggest to you that all of this evidence shows beyond a reasonable doubt that Katie's death was completed with extreme atrocity and cruelty. Ladies and gentlemen, you were instructed at the beginning of this trial and again at the end of this trial on the meaning of reasonable doubt. You have heard that the evidence must convince you of the defendant's guilt to a reasonable and moral certainty, a certainty that convinces your understanding and satisfies your reason and judgment. As you consider how the Commonwealth has convinced you of the defendant's guilt as to first-degree murder to a reasonable and moral certainty, I'd ask that you remember the layers of injuries to Katie's neck, her broken hyoid bone, the fact that the defendant was a doctor with extensive medical experience, and he knew that strangling Katie would reasonably result in her death. The statements to law enforcement that he made, you always have a choice. The 2 large rocks that he placed within her pants before dumping her half-naked body in that pond. The text he sent to Kurt after he had killed her and disposed of her body. That, members of the jury, is proof beyond a reasonable doubt. I'd ask that you consider all of the evidence and return with a verdict finding the defendant guilty.
And this is where I'm going to leave you with a couple of questions. Do you believe Dr. Turk? Do you see a man who's been pushed to the edge, abused, betrayed, spiraling during the height of the pandemic? Or do you see a calculated killer who executed a plan to silence his wife, avoid another divorce, and keep his home and his wealth intact? He says it was panic. The state says it was premeditated. And now the jury is deciding his fate. So let me ask you again, do you believe Dr. Turk? Or do you believe that Katie never stood a chance? The closing arguments are now in the books, and we're waiting for a verdict to come down, and it'll come down at any moment. So don't miss the final moments before justice is served or denied. So thanks for tuning in to Profiling Evil. Look for us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. And if you like audio podcasts, check out Profiling Evil's audio podcasts on your favorite podcast platform. And if you like true crime books, go over to profilingevil.com and pick up my crime books. Number 1, Deceived, an investigative memoir of the Zion Society cult, which it looks into a cult that I took down, and it talks about cult dynamics. Or you can get She Knew No Fear, the story of my great-great-grandmother who was murdered in 1891, and how I solved her murder 130 years later. Hey, thanks for your support of Profiling Evil. We'll see you soon at the next crime scene.
Was it a good education?
It was a good education because East Germany, and opposite to most East Bloc countries, had more resources, and it was somewhat comparable to Western countries.
What education did you have in East Germany?
I had school, typical school, all the way from first grade to graduating high school.
When you graduated high school, what did you do?
After I graduated high school, I went to the military service.
And what kind of military service?
Military service in East Germany was mandatory. 18 months was the minimum we had to serve, and I went to the Air Force.
So you were in the East German Air Force for 18 months.
Correct.
And when you left the military service after 18 months, what did you then do?
I did apply for medical school, but I was accepted a couple years later, so I went and worked as a nurse assistant in an East Berlin hospital
How long did you do that?
for another 18 months.
So after you worked as a nurse assistant in an Eastern Bloc hospital for 18 months, what did you then do?
I entered medical school in September 1989.
Where was
1983, I'm sorry.
It's okay. Where was that?
That was in East Berlin.
And did you complete medical school in East Berlin?
Yes, I attended Humboldt University, a prestigious university in Germany at this point in time, and I graduated medical school 6 years later, summa cum laude.
Okay. What did you do when you graduated from medical school?
I entered residency,
How long did you have a residency?
5 years,
What was the residency in?
in urology.
Urology?
Urology, the disease of the urinary tract.
Urinary tract. What did you then do to advance your career as a physician?
I graduated again, or finished the residency in 1984, and I did 2 years of fellowship.
Where was that?
That was in East Berlin as well, on the Charité University Hospital.
And can you spell that for the stenographer?
Charité is a French word, and C-H-A-R-I-T-E with a dash above the E.
Okay. What did you do then?
I became an attending at the Department of Urology at the Charité Hospital.
What does an attending mean? What is that?
A full-fledged physician that was then training residents, doing responsible work on your own, do surgery on your own. You're basically done with your education and start working as an independent physician.
Were you doing surgery at this point?
I was.
Any particular focus? Was it all on urology?
I was all on urology, but my particular focus was first on transplant, on kidney transplant, particularly in children, which I did many hundreds of, and after that in laparoscopic and robotic surgery, which I became a specialist.
What is laparoscopic surgery?
That is summarized as what we call minimal invasive surgery, minimizing trauma to enter the body to actually execute the surgery that you would do with big incisions. For example, I'm sure that many of you are familiar with a laparoscopic cholecystectomy, removing a gallbladder with small incisions. I just didn't remove gallbladders, I removed kidneys, prostate, bladders.
Okay. What did you then do with your career at that point?
I published a lot. I traveled the world as far as giving presentations is concerned. I did a lot of life surgery because I was one of the pioneers of laparoscopic and robotic surgery.
What is robotic surgery?
Robotic surgery is the next step of laparoscopic surgery. Laparoscopic surgery requires that you have still the tools in your hand. You require significant dexterity as a surgeon. They are long instruments. They're introduced to what we call ports. So you make a small incision on the skin. You introduce cannulas if you want. They have valves because you inflate typically the abdomen of the human being when you do laparoscopic surgery with carbon dioxide, with gas. And then you introduce long instruments into the body, the camera into the body, you watch on the screen, and you perform the surgery inside the body, a closed body, while watching on the screen instead of cutting the patient wide open to access the same area. And the robot now on top of that replaces the limitations of the dexterity of a human hand.
Your hand.
So the robotic device, commonly known here in the United States and the rest of the world, the Da Vinci robot.
Da Vinci? Like
Da Vinci robot connects then to these instruments instead of my human hand and has significantly enhanced dexterity compared to a human hand, while I'll walk over to a console and start manipulating the instrument remotely. I'm not on the body at this point in time of the patient. I'm actually sitting in the corner of the OR room on the console. It's a little bit like a flight simulator. I have my screen, three-dimensional screen, which is another advantage of robotic surgery compared to conventional laparoscopic surgery. And I performed then surgery via the robotic device on the patient connected to the instruments with significantly enhanced dexterity, meaning more accuracy.
Now, when did you come to the United States?
First time I came to the United States was 2001.
Is that when the wall came down?
Sorry, what?
That when the wall came down?
No, the wall came down November 9 to November 10, 1989.
Okay.
I will never forget that.
Okay, and then you came to the U.S. in 2001?
Yes, I did education, finished my education, became somewhat known in the field of my expertise, and I was asked or requested by the Norfolk Department of Urology in Virginia for 6 months to come there and to help training some of their physicians
Is this in the robotic surgery?
in laparoscopic and robotic surgery.
All right, so this was pretty much cutting-edge medical treatment, is that correct?
Correct.
And in your career, you stayed in the United States, is that correct?
That was for 6 months, and a visiting professorship to teach, again, and several Virginia urologists to pick up that kind of technology. And then I returned to Germany for 1 year, and then I came back to the United States
All right.
for good.
And did you become an American citizen?
I did.
What year?
I believe it was somewhere around 2007 or 2008.
Did you speak English when you came to the U.S.?
I did not. I grew up in East Germany, which again was kind of a colony of CCCR. Russian was mandatory in addition to German, and I did not speak a word of English when I came to the United States.
How did you learn English? You
I taught myself.
taught yourself. Tell us about your career in the U.S. now at this point. Did you continue on with robotic surgery?
Yes, that's why I ended up in the United States. I was offered several positions in several academic centers to advance the technology of robotic surgery and bring it to the United States. And I ended up at Lay Clinic.
Okay. So at some point, you became the chief of urology at St. Bede's Hospital?
That is correct.
And chief means that you're the head doctor in that particular department, is that correct?
Correct.
At some point, you were living in the town of Dover, right?
Pretty much the whole time.
The whole time?
Once I moved to the United States in 2003, my wife at that time, and
Krista?
that was Krista, and I moved to Dover and started a family.
Now, how long did you live with Krista in Dover?
15 years,
And you obviously got divorced from Krista.
yes, unfortunately.
You continued on with your job, if you will, with the robotic surgery.
Yes,
Fair to say that you pretty much reached the pinnacle, if you will, of, your career at that point, right?
it's fair to say, yes.
You had a pretty good reputation among other doctors and physicians nationwide, if not international, right?
Correct,
And that would be in robotic surgery.
correct.
At some point, did you buy the property in Dover? When did you buy that house?
You're referring to 29 Valley Road?
Yes, I'm sorry, 29 Valley Road?
I lived before in Dover, Belden Road, and unfortunately, our relationship ended in a divorce. I loved my children, and I didn't want to move out of the town. I wanted to stay close,
Did you stay in Dover?
yes,
And that would be the Valley Road house.
correct. I bought the Valley Road house to be around Taylor and Nick.
When did you move into the Valley Road house? Did you buy it new, or was it somebody else's? first?
It was a new construction, and I bought the house and moved in August 17, sorry, 17.
Now, when you were living in August of 2017, you're living in this brand-new house in Dover, right?
Yes,
It's a beautiful house, right?
beautiful house, yes.
Love the neighborhood,
Yes,
nice people,
yes.
good friends.
Yeah,
Working in Boston as the chief of urology.
correct.
What did you do for entertainment? What did you do for excitement?
A lot of things. Being a surgeon is a pretty stressful job, and unwinding was important.
What did you do?
I did a lot of sports. I worked out. I socialized. I loved riding my motorcycles.
You had motorcycles?
Yeah, Harley
Davidson?
Big fan of Harley Davidson.
And in that regard, sir, as a big fan of Harley Davidson, would you agree with me that it became almost your symbol? You wouldn't wear the headgear the doctors wear. You would wear the Harley Davidson leather cap with the logo on it, right?
Yes.
Now, I'm approaching you with a photograph. What is that photograph? Can you tell us?
That's actually taken in my OR, in my operating room, that was designed and created at St. Elizabeth's when I joined that facility. I'm sitting in the operating room. You're seeing me in scrubs. And you see actually a piece of the Da Vinci robot that I used 4 days a week, 2 to 3 cases a day. And I think I was interviewed. Sorry?
2 to 3 operations a day?
Yes, I had a very high volume on surgeries, 2 to 3 surgeries a day, 4 days a week.
Now, for St. Elizabeth's Hospital, is it fair to say that St. E's capitalized as much as they could with your reputation as a surgeon?
That is correct.
Handing you an item that has been already marked as an exhibit. Can't see it. Oh, it's E for ID. What is that? And hold this so the jurors down here can see it as well.
So I worked at Lay Clinic, as I said.
Sure. So, yes, that's.
Sorry. I worked at Lay Clinic for about 5-6 years, and then I was approached by the CEO of Steward Healthcare, and they thought that I would be a high-profile surgeon they wanted to acquire, and they did some advertisement for my arrival at St. Elizabeth's with that billboard that was over Fenway Park.
This is the billboard itself.
That is the photograph of the billboard that was right hanging over Fenway Park.
And what year was that, sir?
That was 2017.
So in 2000.
No, sorry, 2007, sorry, 2007.
How long did you live in the Valley Road house?
From 17 to 2020.
All right, so let's focus on the date, because you've said 17 and 7.
I know,
What is
I'm
it?
sorry.
That's okay. 17,
2017, August 2017 until May 2020.
Yes. And during that period of time, 2017, 2018, fair to say that you continued on in your position with the hospital as the chief of urology.
Correct.
You continued on living life large in your house in Dover with your motorcycles and whatever else you did for recreation, correct?
And took care of my children, yes.
And then at some point, you met Kathleen McLean.
That is correct.
When was that?
That was in November of 2017.
Tell us about that. How'd you meet her?
Dating website.
And did you go on dates?
Yes, we did.
And at some point, did you end up, have in mind, it's November of 2017 that you met her, right?
Correct.
If you could, pardon me, Your Honor, just hold that up. Excuse me, make sure everybody can see it. November of 2017, you met Ms. McLean, yes?
Correct.
March of 2018, what happened then?
She moved into my house, although it was April.
It was April.
It was middle of April.
So it was about 5 months later.
Correct.
And she moved into your house 5 months later, but you had lived together prior to that? No.
No,
You lived together after that for 2 years.
correct.
And after the 2 years, in December of 2019, what happened then?
Are you talking about the marriage?
Yeah,
Yeah, we got married.
okay. And you got married in December of 2019, right?
Yes.
So she moves in with her 3 children into your home in March of 18, and then in December of 19, she ends up marrying you in Las Vegas. Is that correct?
Yes, I went to Las Vegas for a medical conference, and she asked to accompany me.
Now, who obtained the marriage license?
Katie,
How did she do that?
online.
Why were you going to Las Vegas in December of 2019?
I attended the World Congress of Anti-Aging Medicine. That was the purpose of going to Las Vegas.
Was that at the Bellagio Hotel?
That was at the Bellagio Hotel.
And when you went to the Bellagio Hotel, tell us about the marriage. Did she tell you that she had a license or something, or how did that happen?
No, I had no idea.
What did you do?
So the medical conference, the World Congress of Anti-Aging Medicine, was for about 4 days, I believe. And on the second day, after the seminars and the lectures were over, we took the Jeep Wrangler that I rented and drove around the strip, the main strip in Las Vegas. And we stopped at a bar. I mean, we drove for a while around just to look at the Las Vegas city, which is a pretty impressive location. And then at some point in time, we stopped and we walked into a bar.
Did you drink in the bar?
Yes, quite a lot. That was a typical bar for Las Vegas, big horseshoe-shaped bar with the whole front open to the main strip. And I don't remember much, but I do remember we were sitting there and I met a cowboy and we started drinking. And she was sitting on the other side of the cowboy. And I had several martinis. She had some, Katie had some Cosmos. And then all I remember is that I was talking to a woman hanging out of a window.
So would that be when you got married?
That's what I was told the next morning.
And where you got married, was that the Elvis Chapel in Las Vegas?
Yeah, the next day I drove one more time by to see what really happened. And it was a drive-in facility where you drive in, you lower your window, a person comes out of the window and marries you.
So the person came out of the window.
I mean, leaning out of the window, yes.
You're in the rental car, right?
Yes, we were in the Jeep, I believe.
And did somebody marry you, like a minister or a priest or anybody?
I don't really remember. I only remember it was a woman. That's the only thing I remember that talked to us. And the next morning, I was told I was married.
All right. Now, I'm approaching you with what has not yet been marked for identification. Can you identify this photograph, sir?
No, we didn't go there.
You didn't go there, okay. How about this?
Well, that sounds looks familiar.
Okay. And when you had occasion to get married, do you recall that you actually went into what's called the Elvis Chapel?
No, we didn't go in. Again, we were in the car. I never remember that I actually got out of the car. I got married in the car.
You got married in the car?
In the car. That's
Look it
what a drive-through chapel is doing. You're not getting out. It's kind of like you're buying a burger.
Okay. Is this indicative of the guy hanging out the window?
That's exactly how that looked like, except the guy was a woman.
Guy was a woman, but that basically is the drive-through wedding chapel that you went to, is that correct?
I'm not sure if it was exactly this one, but it is exactly how it looked. We drove into that area. Somebody was leaning out the window and talking to us.
All right. And after the wedding, would you agree, sir, that documentation was obtained to show that you in fact were married in Las Vegas? Did you have a copy of your marriage license?
At some point in time, I did.
Where did that come from?
That came from Las Vegas.
After you went through the drive-through and after you got married, you went back to Massachusetts?
Yes, once the medical conference was over, we flew back.
Continue with your job.
Correct.
Approaching you with the document, sir. Approaching you with the document, sir. Do you know what that is?
State of Nevada, marriage certificate.
Right off of that, Rob.
No objection.
Okay, may be admitted.
Exhibit 337.
Now, let's fast forward, if you will, to after you were married, did she then move? She was already living with you with her 3 children, is that correct?
Yes, she was living in my house for quite some time at that point in time. With her 3 children, correct.
So in December of 19, December 14th, Merry Christmas, all that, you get married, right?
I get married by surprise.
Yes. January 31st, about 5 weeks later, is when you met with Attorney Lascivita, is that correct?
Yes.
Why did you meet with Attorney Lascivita?
Because at that point in time, and not just since December, it was already before that, it became clear that that relationship is not going in the direction that we were hoping. Both were hoping.
That was your state of mind at that point, correct?
I wanted a divorce.
All right, and then you went to see Attorney Lascivita.
Correct.
And did she send you something?
She sent me an email.
And when she sent you the email, do you recall, as she testified, the date of the email confirming that you met with her, that you were going to get the marriage certificate, and that you were going to divorce Kathleen McLean? Do you know when that letter was, email?
That was on the 31st of January.
And did you read that yourself?
Yes.
What, if any, involvement did Kathleen McLean have with your communications with Attorney Lascivita?
She did not know.
At some point, did she, to your knowledge, find out?
She did.
How?
She went on my phone while I was sleeping
And what did she do?
and she looked around and found my email communication with Attorney La Civita.
As a result of that, what, if anything, happened between you and Kathleen McLean?
As a result of that, she went to Dover Police and filed for a restraining order.
Did she get a restraining order?
She got a restraining order.
Is that when the police officer served you with it, testified that you were in your driveway, you were cooperative with the police, but you had your hands on your legs and you're asking? Do you recall the police officer serving you with the warrant?
Yes.
What do you call it, the restraining order?
Yes, I do recall that. It
Okay,
was,
the answer is yes.
yes,
And did you vacate your home?
I had to.
Where did you go?
First, I didn't know. I was calling some friends, and I ended up with an acquaintance in Dover.
That be Charlie Lax?
That would be Charlie Lax.
How long did you stay with Charlie Lax?
Approximately 3 weeks.
And at some point, you had to leave Charlie's home?
Yes.
Where did you go?
I again scrambled and called several friends or acquaintances, and I finally got a positive answer from Richie Kovitz.
And that would be the gentleman that testified here yesterday, right?
That is correct.
And Richie and his fiancee or girlfriend Carla allowed you to come into where they lived, right?
Very grateful that they let me come to their apartment, because otherwise I
Was it
wouldn't
an
have.
apartment or a condo?
I was a kind of a small condo.
And you stayed there for how long?
I stayed there for approximately 5 weeks.
During that 5 weeks, did you stay continuously there, or did you leave to go anywhere?
I left in the middle of March to travel to Germany.
Why did you travel to Germany?
I had a consultant contract with the robotic company by the name of Avatera in Jena, which is a German town in the southern part of eastern Germany. And I wanted to start my job as a consultant to develop a new robotic surgical device.
So now, would you agree that you went to Germany and you spoke to a gentleman by the name of Mr. Kupka, who was the managing director of Avatera Medicals, A-V-A-T-E-R-A Medical in Jena, J-E-N-A, Germany?
Yeah, it's pronounced Jena.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And this was so that you could have a job dealing with robotic surgery and mobile device management, correct?
Correct.
How long were you in Germany for?
I was there for approximately a week.
And did you come back to the U.S.?
I had to.
Why?
COVID hit, and Germany responded just as the United States, a complete lockdown. The company was closed. And also President Trump at that time asked for all U.S. residents to return to America.
And you did so.
I immediately, after the company closed down and my job was not performable at this point in time, drove to Frankfurt, Main, and took basically the last flight that was available to America.
When you got back to the States, sir, where did you stay?
When I came back, I stayed in Norwood, in a hotel in Norwood. That was my only option at this point in time.
And at some point, sir, this is when the pandemic struck, is that right?
That was the high point of the start of the pandemic, where we had no idea what is going on.
Did you ask people, for example, did you have occasion to ask Mr. Kovitz if you could go back and live with him?
As soon as I arrived in Newark,
What's your answer, yes or no?
yes,
All right, now, what did you say?
as soon as I arrived in Newark, New Jersey, coming from Frankfurt, I called Richie and said, hey, listen, I had to come back. Can I come back to your condo?
What did he indicate to you?
And he said, sorry, Harry, I can't take you in.
Did he say why?
He said, yes, his condo board
All right,
forbid to have anybody coming in.
what did you do then?
I stayed at the hotel at that point in time.
And that would be in Norwood?
That would be in Norwood on Route 1.
What was your state of mind about the pandemic, sir?
I was scared.
Why?
I started to, the news about thousands of people dying every day started to get to me, and I didn't feel safe in the hotel without my own personal space. I believed I potentially belonged to the risk population of being 58 years old, and and not being safe, not being exposed to the environment.
What about
Sorry, what?
that? What did you do about that?
Oh,
Go somewhere?
I called around, I called many friends. At least I thought they were friends at that time, and asked if anybody has a couch, has a little room where I could stay. They said, oh no, until Mr. Guyon, another friend of mine, said, you know what, I have a camper, a trailer down in Florida.
So as a result of Mr. Guyon letting you stay in his camper, was it one of those big fancy ones, you know, that's almost like a mobile home, or was it like a trailer?
It was kind of more like a trailer. It was not fancy and wasn't big,
Okay.
but it was a personal space, and that was important to me.
You were thankful for that.
I was very thankful that I had a place where I could actually stay myself and lock myself.
So you did
Down.
go to Florida.
I do drive
How
to.
long did you stay in Florida?
I drove to Florida and stayed there for 6 or 7 weeks.
What's the time frame that we're talking about now?
I drove down to Florida on the end of March and came back on the 7th of May.
And during this period of time, you had engaged, after Attorney Lasiviter, who sent you the letter that Ms. McLean saw, you engaged Attorney Hoffman, is that correct?
Yes,
And Attorney Hoffman was your attorney representing you in discussions and negotiations, trying to get this divorce settled during that period of time, is that right?
that is correct.
Now, when in time frame did you come back up to Massachusetts?
I came back to Massachusetts on May 7th.
Prior to May 7th, before May 7th, while you were in Florida, did you have any contact with Ms. McLean at all?
Not directly.
How about indirectly?
Yes,
How?
Kurt Pfannenstiel.
Kurt Pfannenstiel. Now, who is Kurt Pfannenstiel?
He was a friend.
And Mr. Pfannenstiel helped you out during this negotiation phase, sir?
He communicated in between us.
How did he do that? Did he call you, or what did he do?
He called me,
On a phone?
correct.
And when was this?
It started mid of April.
Did you talk to Kurt, yes or no?
Yes,
As a result of talking to Kurt, did he then hand the phone to somebody else?
yes, he did.
Who?
Katie.
What did Katie say to you?
Katie said to me, Harry, come back home. I still love you.
Did you continue to stay in Florida, or did you make arrangements to come back home?
I stayed at that time still in Florida
When did you come back home?
on May 7th.
Where did you go to stay?
I went to Dedham,
That'd be the hotel.
but not by myself. Not by myself. Yeah,
It's the hotel that we all went to when we took a view, is that correct?
correct,
The Residence Inn.
correct.
Now, when you went to the Residence Inn, you took out, you signed the paperwork, it was in your name, right?
Yes,
You also said that you wanted Katie to have the key, is that right?
yes.
Did she go into that room with you, or two of you together?
She picked me up in New York.
Now, who was with her when she picked you up in New York?
Her ex-husband, Stephen Roca,
That's the guy with the beard, right?
correct.
Now, what was your state of mind when you saw Mr. Roca driving the car when they picked you up in New York?
I was,
Objection.
Rephrase it, please. Sustained.
You had seen Mr. Roca before that day, correct?
yes,
You had seen Mr. Roca picking up his children to visit with them prior to that, right?
Objection.
Overall.
yes,
And where did Mr. Roca park his car when he'd pick up his kids?
on the street.
And yes or no, did you have conversations with Kathleen McLean about Mr. Roca, yes or no?
Many.
And how would you describe the relationship between Kathleen McLean and Mr. Roca while you were married to her, observing him picking up his children?
Objection.
Sustained in that form.
So you were surprised that Mr. Roca was with her?
Correct.
Mr. Roca drove the car.
Yes.
Why could you not drive a car?
I had problems with my back and my legs at this point in time.
What kind of problems?
And I felt numbness and muscle weakness because of my back injuries.
How'd you get back injuries?
That's an occupational hazard of being a surgeon.
Okay. Like being a nurse too, bending over and
Correct.
checking people?
Bending over for hours at a time, you inadvertently will have disc prolapses, and that's what happened to me.
So during this period of time, can you tell the jury, what was your relationship with Ms. McLean? Did she allow you back into your home?
I stayed for a couple of days at the hotel, and on Sunday, May 10th, I went back to the Dover home.
And did she invite you back?
Yes, she asked me to come home.
Did you intentionally violate a restraining order and go in that house?
The restraining order was vacated at that time.
So she vacated the restraining order
Correct,
and then invited you into the house?
correct,
She's there with her 3 kids.
correct.
During that period of time, would you agree, sir, that you were amorous, loving, having sex, that type of stuff?
Yes, I was very grateful that I could come back home to shelter myself because the camper was sold and I had to leave Florida because I did not have a shelter down there anymore. So I was loving, kind, and accommodating, very accommodating, and expressed my
Was one
I
of
love
the
to her.
things that was requested of you that you do something with the house?
yes.
What was that?
She asked me to put her name on the deed.
Did you do that?
I did.
Why did you do that? I mean, this house is worth a couple of $1 million. Why did you do that?
If I wouldn't have done it, I wouldn't have been able to come home.
So you signed a deed transferring interest to her, right?
Correct.
Now, you heard the testimony of Attorney Keighton. You know Mr. Keighton, right?
Yes.
You heard the testimony?
I knew of him. I didn't know him well. I knew of him.
Okay. And you knew that there was an issue about her being on the deed, and if you die, that she'd end up getting everything, right?
Correct.
Did you also sign a postnuptial agreement?
I was part of it that I had to sign to be allowed to come back home.
Did you sign that?
I,
What were the terms that did you have to pay any money on that?
yes,
Okay. And now you then moved back into the house, right?
on the evening of May 10th, I moved permanently back in the house.
And how are things working between the two of you?
It started off very well. We really tried to be good to each other and loving and kind, and we spent a lot of time together, had a lot of sex.
When you say you had a lot of sex, I don't know how to be gracious about this. Was there a number of times that she would request or demand sex from you?
Excuse me?
Were there a number of times that she would request or demand sex from you?
Yes,
Okay. For example, did she send you text messages saying, let's fuck at 10:15?
yes,
Were there a number of text messages like that?
there were many of them.
Would you come home and then go to the bedroom and have sex with her?
I would come home often, and she asked me to go upstairs.
Did you do that during that period of time up until May 15th?
It started already in the Dedham Hotel. As soon as we came back, she wanted sex.
And then in the Dedham Hotel, then you went to the house in Dover, and it continued.
That's
Right.
correct.
And you felt that things were going to hopefully be okay.
I had really high hopes that things would work out.
All right. After she vacated the restraining order and got you back into the house, do you recall the evening of the, I believe the 15th of May, 2020?
I think you mean May
The
14th.
14th, I'm sorry, it's been a long day.
Well, the day was beautiful, was nice. I worked in the yard. Actually, with Sam and Grace together, we cut out grass that was yellow from Cooper and
What's
replaced
Cooper?
it. Cooper is our dog.
What kind of dog?
He's a yellow lab. So we cut out grass. I went before to Home Depot and bought sod and replaced the yellow spots in the backyard with new sod. And in the afternoon, I took a break and Katie started making martinis.
Did you start drinking?
Yes, I
Both of
was.
you?
Sorry?
Both of you?
Yes, she drank Cosmo and I drank martinis.
Did you then, the two of you and the children, engage in any activities?
Yes, after 2 or 3 martinis, we had dinner as a family in the kitchen on the family table, which was nice. And after that, Katie, Sam, Grace, and I played a board game by the name of Game of Life.
And what time did you finish playing the board game? Did the kids then go somewhere after playing the board game?
We played after dinner for probably 2 hours, kind of estimate, and we finished probably around somewhat 9 p.m. And then Sam and Grace went upstairs to their rooms. And Katie and I continued to have some drinks and went to the family room watching TV.
Okay. Now, have in mind that she was living with you for 2 years, then you guys get married for about 5 weeks. All of that period of time, she had her 3 children living in the house. Did you make improvements to the house? Just
A lot.
like what?
I built a pool in the backyard because she wanted a pool. I finished the whole backyard with walls, the cabana, fireplace, because she wanted to have parties in there. She was a very social person, and she wanted to have parties in the backyard, so we built that for about, I built that for about $250,000.
Did you also have the gym in the basement and the movie theater in the
Well,
basement?
we finished the basement because Katie asked me to have an office in the basement for her work. And I said, okay, I'm going to build you an office and let's finish the rest of the basement as well.
So, on that evening that we're talking about now, after the board games and after the kids went downstairs to do whatever they're gonna do in the movie theater or whatnot, where did you and Katie then go?
After we watched TV or
Yeah,
after the game?
And after the kids went downstairs?
Excuse me, can you repeat again?
After the game,
After the game, we went to the family room and watched TV.
right. How long did you watch TV for?
Approximately 2 hours
Where did you go?
in the bedroom.
When you got up to the bedroom, what were you wearing? If you remember.
I don't remember, T-shirt and jeans probably.
What, if anything, did you and Katie do in the bedroom?
She wanted sex.
Did you have sex?
We did have sex.
Now, you've seen a spot of blood on the bed, a round spot of blood on the bed. Do you know where that came from?
Yes,
Where?
she had a period.
And was that something that you had seen before the 15th?
Yes, that actually happened on May 10th when I came home from the hotel.
Okay. Tell us about that night after you had sex. Everything going along well?
That so far is, went well. Then we were laying after sex in the bed. She was reading something and I was looking on my phone.
What happened then?
I told her that I saw a text from Kate Kelly.
Who's Kate Kelly?
Kate Kelly is an old friend of mine. I knew Kate Kelly since over 15 years. And
What did she say when you told her?
Katie
the text from
was
Kate?
always jealous of her.
What did she say?
And I said to Katie, even Kate Kelly tells us good luck with our reconciliation.
What happened then?
She got extremely angry.
What did she do?
She demanded the phone from me.
Did you give her the phone?
She said, give me the phone, I need to see the texts. And I said to her, please don't do it. Because there were all the text messages from before.
Months before.
Yeah, during the separation months when Kate Kelly was communicating with me and trying to help me going through that time. And there were certainly some critical words written about her. And I told Katie, please don't look at that. That's old stuff. You proposed clean slate.
Did she look at it?
She did, and
Listen to my questions.
Yes.
When she looked at it,
she
what happened?
she demanded the phone, and I gave it to her.
She proceeds to look at the phone.
She did,
The Kate Kelly texts.
correct.
What did she then do?
She got even more angrier.
Did she do anything at that point?
She screamed,
At you?
yes,
Where were you when this was going on?
the bed.
Did you have, by the way, alcohol? Were you guys still drinking?
Oh, I started drinking, or we continued drinking again after the game, and we continued drinking in the bedroom, yes.
And did you have, were you drinking with a glass in your hand while you were talking to her after you guys?
We both had glasses in our hands, correct?
And at some point, while she's yelling at you, what happened then?
Well, I tried to calm her down and said, please, Katie, stop. Please, please, Katie, please stop. And she was in the bed, and I kind of walked around and tried to calm her down, and I went on my knees and begged her to stop, please.
You went on your knees,
On my knees,
and you begged her to stop.
yes.
So what did she say?
I said, fuck you.
What happened then?
She hit me.
With what?
It's the glass.
Did you know that? Did she hit you with the glass?
Yes,
And where did she hit you with the glass?
right on my head.
When she hit you with the glass, did you get cut?
Yes, I bled.
I'm showing you what has been marked as Exhibit 294. Could hold that up for the jury and point out exactly where the injury is to your head in that photograph, sir.
Right here is the cut.
Now, show all of us down here too, please. All right? So that would be the right side of your head,
Yes,
right? Right here.
right here.
Now, when she struck you with the glass, did the glass do anything?
It broke.
And where were you when the glass broke?
I was on the floor,
What was your state
kneeling.
of mind at that point?
I was scared to hell.
What did you do as a result of getting struck with the glass, causing you to bleed while you were on the floor? What did you do then?
I snapped. I kind of blacked out.
What did you do?
I grabbed her
Where?
on the neck.
How? Did you say anything?
Oh,
What did she do?
she just flailed around, and then she kind of flailed around and fell. We fell on the floor together, I think, because that's when I came out of my blackout. That's where we were on the
What
floor.
happened then?
She was not responsive, or she was, passed out, and I asked her, Katie, come on, please, Katie, wake up. Please, Katie, wake up.
Did you realize she wasn't waking up?
She didn't wake up.
What did you then do, sir?
Lifted her up and put her on the bed.
What did you then do?
To be comfortable, and then I tried some CPR on her.
Did that help?
It didn't work.
What happened then?
I was just sitting there and crying.
What happened then?
I panicked.
What do you mean you panicked? What did you do?
I tried to figure out what to do about that situation.
What does that mean? What did you want to do?
I wanted to kill myself.
What happened then?
I decided that I needed to put her somewhere else.
Why?
One of the main thoughts that I do remember is that I can't have her children find her.
So what did you do?
I carried her out of the house,
Where did you put her?
put her in the car,
Where did you go?
put her on the passenger seat of the Jeep. When I
Where did you go?
drove to the pond.
Is that the pond that's next to the house where the real estate guy testified here a couple of days ago that she wanted to buy a house, but it wasn't big enough to put a pool, but she wanted you to look at a house?
That is correct.
Objection.
Sustained in that form.
Is that the house? Did you go look at a house with her?
We looked at that house 2 years prior, yes.
Right, and she went by herself first,
Yes.
and then that brought you.
Then she said,
Has to form.
Okay, so did you go look at the house?
she asked me to look at the house with her.
Did you?
Yes,
All right. Is that the pond that you went to?
yes.
What did you do when you got to the pond with the Wrangler and with Katie?
I put her in the water.
When you put her in the water, did you take her top off?
No, I did not.
What happened to the top?
I have no idea.
Did you see photographs that showed that it was snagged on a branch by the edge of the pond?
You told me I didn't look at that photograph.
Look at it.
No.
Okay. At some point, did you realize that she was floating?
Yeah, kind of was surprised that
What
she
did you
was.
do as a result of that?
I walked through the yard and tried to look for something that may, bring her down.
What were you wearing for footwear?
I was wearing flip-flops,
What were you wearing for clothes?
boxers.
Boxer shorts?
Yes,
Why were you wearing boxer shorts?
because that's all I had on after we had sex.
Found some rocks?
Well, I stumbled through that yard and looked for something heavier, and I came across dead rocks, yes.
That's what you used to weigh it down?
Well, I ultimately used the drugs, yes.
And where did you go?
I drove to the hotel.
Okay,
Well,
after you drove to
I
the...
tried to drive to the hotel, yes. Sorry,
Prior to
what?
going to the hotel, before going to the hotel, did you go anywhere else?
I realized I forgot my phone, and I wanted to say goodbye to some friends, and I went back to the house and get my phone.
So you went back to the house with your sandals and your underwear, and you walked back into the house, sir?
Yes, and that time I also put clothes back on, yes.
Now, when you were walking into the house, strike that, when you were leaving the house, if at all you noticed anything, did you notice any marks on the floor?
Oh, I carried it in front of me. I didn't see anything.
All right, when you went back to the house, did you have occasion to see if there's any marks left by your footwear on the floor as you went up the stairs to get your phone and go back down?
It appeared that way, that there was something there, yeah.
Did you get your phone?
I did get my phone.
What did you do with the phone once you got it?
I first drove to the hotel, I think, and I texted goodbye to some friends,
Texted goodbye to your friends.
yes.
What friends did you text goodbye to?
As far as I remember, I saw he's a friend, Kurt Pfannenstiel, and then some other friends.
Is that when you said to Kurt that you apologize and you're sorry and she was a devil and she played us all and love you, Harry?
Yes.
Now, what did you then do? Did you go to the hotel?
I went to the hotel, although I don't remember a lot of that stuff. I was very intoxicated at that point in time.
So now, at the time that you had the glass smashed against your head and had the argument with Ms. McLean, were you intoxicated at that point?
Yes.
And when you left the house and then went to the hotel, I think there's been some photographs that showed a Glenfiddich Scotch, is it Scotch whiskey?
Whiskey.
Yes? On the passenger seat of the car? Did you
That's
drink out
what
of
the
that?
picture shows, yeah.
Did you drink out of that?
Yes, I drank so much because I just didn't want to deal. I was just shocked.
There's a knife that's underneath, up against the back seat of the car. Do you recall that knife?
I saw a picture of a knife on.
Where'd that come from?
We typically had knife in the car in the glove box as a tool.
So that wasn't a weapon or anything like
No,
that?
no.
When you went back to the hotel, what happened? If you remember.
I tried to kill myself.
How did you do that?
Tried to cut myself.
Where did you obtain the knife to do that?
I don't know. It must have been there in the kitchen.
I'm showing you what's been marked as Exhibit 296. You recognize that, sir?
Yes,
What is that?
left wrist.
And you still to this day bear scars? with
I
the
have,
linear lines?
A big scar right here.
And this was what you did to yourself?
Tried to cut myself, yes.
And
Kill
that
myself.
would be the knife that was depicted on the table with the blood on it, right?
I assume so, yes. I don't really remember much of that.
Now, when you were admitted to the hospital, the medical records would show that one of the observations that were made is that you were attempting suicide by alcohol poisoning. Do you recall your state of inebriation when you went into the hospital, if you even remember?
I was gone. I don't remember any of that.
Okay. Do you remember being in the hospital?
When I woke up,
Do you remember the police coming to talk to you?
yes.
And when you spoke to the police, what was your condition when you spoke to the police? Were you awake? Were you aware? Were you tired? What
I
you
was
feel?
totally hungover. I had a massive headache and I was very confused. I was shocked about the whole thing. Actually, I was shocked that I woke up. I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to live.
So you spoke to the police, we heard your statement to the police, correct?
I spoke to the police, yes.
At the time that you had the glass smashed off your head, cutting you, causing you to bleed, and you came up with your hand and grabbed her with your hand by the throat, did you intend to cause her harm and kill her?
No. Oh, never. Excuse me?
Do you need a minute?
Oh, I'm good. I'm good.
All right, so you met Katie on Bumble,
That's correct.
and she was kind of a free spirit, right?
Very much so, yes.
She was a Reiki practitioner.
She called it Reiki, but it's not what she really did.
She called it Reiki, but that's not what she really did.
No.
She considered herself a healer,
She was a medium, a psychic.
and she considered herself a healer.
I'm not sure about that.
She helped people.
She connected people with died from dead family members, yes.
And her clients felt that she had a healing power, right?
Excuse me?
Her clients felt that she had a healing power.
She helped her, by connecting with dead family members, yes,
And she had many friends who were devoted to her.
yes,
And in May of 2020, she had 3 children.
yes,
Sam was 13,
yes,
Grace was 17,
correct,
and Sophie was 18.
yes,
And Sam had just enrolled in the Landmark School, right?
yes.
And the Dover Public Schools were paying for that.
I helped with that, yes.
Well, that wasn't my question whether you helped. What I said was that the Dover Public Schools were paying for the Landmark School.
That's correct.
And Katie loved being a mother.
Most of the time, yes,
She was devoted to her children.
most of the time.
And her friends and her family were right to be surprised when she was missing, right?
Objection.
All right, sustained, rephrase it.
You were asked about that in the interview, right? Do you recall that?
Ask about what, please?
About that she wouldn't just leave her children, right?
Oh, she did.
So in the beginning of the interview, do you recall the interview at the hospital with Sergeant Kukowski and with Detective Gonski?
I don't recall all of the interview, sorry.
You don't remember all of the interview?
No, I remember
Do
pieces
you
of
remember
it.
the section when Detective Gonski said she wouldn't just leave her kids? Page 32?
Can I see it?
Sure.
What page was it?
32.
Yes,
Does that refresh your memory? Yes. And Detective Gonski said she wouldn't just leave her kids. And you said right.
I said no,
You agreed with Detective Gonski she wouldn't just leave her kids.
yes.
Okay. And it's not unusual when someone's getting divorced that one person has to leave the house, right?
No, not by restraining order, I don't think so.
So, in divorces, when there are 2 people living in a home, it's not unusual that one person has to leave, right?
At some point in time, certainly.
And did that happen in your first marriage in Germany?
Did that happen in my first German marriage?
Yes.
Oh, that was totally different.
Did you have to leave the home?
Actually,
To the sidebar.
divorced in Germany, right?
Yes.
Did you have to leave the family home in that divorce?
No.
And what about in your second divorce?
Ultimately, yes, but first not.
Okay. But you moved out, right?
Correct. Ultimately, I did.
And then you purchased a second home. That's the 29 Valley Road, right?
That's correct.
And you were upset, you mentioned the restraining order just now, you were upset when the restraining order issued and barred you from living at 29 Valley Road, right?
Officer Wilcox said I was sad. I was sad.
I'm not asking about what Officer Wilcox said, I'm asking how you felt.
I was sad.
Were you upset?
I was not upset, but sad that I had to leave my home.
All right. And then you struggled to find a place to live.
Correct.
And you felt that the house was yours, right?
I bought it. It wasn't my name.
But did you feel like it was your property?
Yes.
And you still feel that way, right?
Well, I shared the deed with her. I don't know. House is long gone.
All right. And you thought that Katie should leave, right?
Sorry, what?
You thought that Katie should leave, right?
Excuse me.
You thought that Katie should leave 29 Valley Road, right?
I didn't think anybody should leave when we planned the divorce, or when I planned the divorce.
I'm sorry, I missed that last part. When you planned the divorce?
When I planned the divorce, I did not see that anybody had to leave until the end of the school year.
Okay. So you planned to get divorced, stay living together until the end of the school year.
That is what was somewhat discussed, yes, with her actually.
And then who was going to leave at the end of the school year?
I was leaving to Germany, was selling the house, and Katie and her 3 children would move into the condo of Belmont of her mother.
Okay, but you weren't going to leave in that plan, right? You were going to stay at 29 Valley.
I would move to Germany.
But you weren't going to leave until you went to Germany.
Nobody was leaving until I went to Germany, until the school year was over.
Okay. And then on April 15th, you were living at that time where were you living on April 15th?
April 15th, I was living in Florida, in a trailer.
In the trailer park. And that was the trailer that Bob Guyan owned?
Yes, it was a small camper, actually.
A small
Yes.
camper?
Yeah.
All right. And Bob Guyan, how did you know him?
Bob Guyan used to be the COO or CFO of Stewart Healthcare, and he became a patient of mine. He had aggressive prostate cancer. I did.
So he had a fair amount of resources, right?
Excuse me?
He had a fair amount of resources, Bob Guyan?
I do not know for sure.
He's the COO of Stewart Healthcare?
I don't know about his resources. We were friends, but I didn't worry about his resources.
And he lived in Newport, right? In Florida?
Florida was a camper.
Okay. And he also lived in Newport, Rhode Island?
Yes, he had purchased a house in Newport.
All right. And this camper, it's not like a standalone camper. It was at a particular over 55 area, right?
It was a standalone camper.
But it wasn't a standalone camper in the sense that there were no other campers around it, right?
No, it was camping ground, an RV ground,
Okay.
or RV park, something like that.
And there were trailers also?
There were other campers, RVs, and there were some few, I don't know how you would call them, cabins.
It's an over 55 community?
I do not recall over 55 community.
There was a pool,
That was closed at the time because of COVID.
but there was a pool?
It was closed.
I'm not asking if the pool was open or closed. I'm just asking.
There was a pool
whether-
without water, yes.
I'm sorry, I just want to make sure you're understanding my
There was a pool without water. It was empty. It was closed up. Nobody was allowed to go to the pool because of, nobody was allowed to congregate because of COVID. We were all by ourselves in the campers.
Okay. But this isn't a camper in the middle of nowhere. This is a camper that's part of a planned community, right?
Yeah, but the community didn't exist at the time of COVID. Nobody was congregating. Everybody was staying in their own campers because COVID and the shutdowns and everything just demanded that. We didn't hang out together. I was by myself
You were by yourself in Florida,
in the camper, yes.
in the camper. Okay. You weren't happy in that situation, right?
I was scared.
Were you happy?
No,
All right, so you weren't happy,
no,
you were scared,
yes,
and then you said that you wanted to reconcile with Katie, right?
Kurt Fenenstiel called me before that.
Kurt called you before that, and so you're testifying right now that it was Katie's idea that you should get back together.
Kurt told me that Katie let him know that she believes that, she wants me to come home, or she missed me, she missed the family, and he just wanted me be aware of that.
And this is prior to April 17th, that's what you're testifying to?
Yes.
Could I just a minute, please?
Yes.
We'll come back to that. All right, so you just talked about the restraining order and the circumstances that led to the restraining order. Katie didn't go directly to a courthouse to get a restraining order, right?
My understanding is that she went to the police in Dover, and the police drove her to the courthouse.
All right. And she went to the police and said, I'm getting divorced and I think you should know, right?
I believe that's correct.
All right. And then the police said, wait a minute,
I'm
we
gonna
need to talk about
object
this,
to all
right?
this now.
Sustain, rephrase it, please.
All right. She didn't call the police from the 29 Valley Road to report anything, right?
No,
And after the conversation that she had with the police, then that was when she went with the police to the district court to get the restraining order, right?
that's my understanding.
And then after that, that's when the Dover police took out the charges, right?
Yes,
And part of that led to a no contact order as well, right?
correct.
That no contact order was in place on May 15th of 2020, right?
Correct.
And that was something that you were concerned about when you went back to 29 Valley Road in May, right?
No, by that time, the restraining order was vacated.
The restraining order was vacated, but the no contact order was in place, right?
I'm not sure.
And you took efforts to make sure that you were only driving the Jeep back and forth to the hotel, right?
I wouldn't call it took efforts. It was the fact that Katie came with the Jeep to pick me up on Sunday night on the 10th. And then we drove the Jeep back to the house, and then though we had just the Jeep at the house.
But first you went to the hotel because the Mercedes ended up at the hotel, right?
When Katie picked me up from New York, we went to the hotel, yes.
In the Mercedes.
Correct.
And then you drove back and forth between the house at 29 Valley and the Residence Inn in the Jeep, right?
No,
You didn't drive back and forth between the house and the hotel in the Jeep,
no.
okay? And you wanted to make sure that the neighbors knew that the restraining order had been vacated, right?
Katie wanted to make sure.
Well, you texted Katie and told her to make sure that the neighbors knew, right?
I believe she did that before, but I asked her, hey, do the neighbors know that it's okay to be here? And she said yes.
Because you knew that there was still the no contact order, and you didn't want to get into trouble with the court, right?
That is true, yes.
And part of signing the post-nup was so that you could get back in the house, right?
That was the main part.
And you wanted to resolve the divorce, right?
It was part of the post-nup.
Okay. You wanted to resolve being able to be back in the house,
I wanted to have safe shelter, yes.
all right? And then there were provisions about getting the girls through high school.
Correct.
There were provisions about selling the house
There was, yes.
and about your retirement accounts.
I don't remember that, but if you say so, yes.
All right. And you divided up the motor vehicles too, right?
Excuse me?
You divided up the motor vehicles too?
No.
In the event of a future divorce, you kept the Mercedes and were responsible for the maintenance costs, and she kept the Jeep?
I'm not sure. If you say that it's on there, then it's probably true. I don't remember about the cars. I just remember that she put that post-nup in front of me and said, please sign, otherwise you can't come home.
And there was never any provision in there, or alimony was not going to happen, right? That wasn't part of it.
I'm not sure if that was part of it. It was about the house deed, about staying there for 2 years for Grace to finish high school, about her getting money, and of that stuff. Sorry.
All right. And you told the police in the interview that you agreed that she should feel secure in the home.
That was part of the post-nup agreement, correct?
And you told the police that you agreed with that, right?
Yes. I wanted to make things work, yes.
All right. Your bedroom is a very large bedroom, correct?
Yes,
And it wouldn't be easy to walk out of that bedroom, right?
I'm not sure if I understand what you mean.
At the point that you were having the argument with Katie, it would have been easy just to walk out the door, right?
That's an option, certainly.
You also could have locked yourself in the bathroom.
Yes,
You could have locked yourself in the big walk-in closet.
yes,
You didn't do any of those things.
that is correct.
And you weren't afraid of Katie at that point in time, right?
I was afraid of being thrown out again. She threatened me to be thrown, that I'm gonna kick you out of the house. She asked me, get the fuck out of my house.
So you were afraid that you were going to have to leave 29 Valley.
I was afraid of dying of COVID.
You were afraid of dying of COVID, and you were afraid of having to leave 29 Valley.
I was afraid of dying of COVID.
And there was some mention in one of the emails that you had with Mr. Hoffman about how you thought that maybe you had COVID. You recall that?
I was negative.
You actually didn't have it. How tall are you, sir?
6'3".
How much did you weigh in May of 2020?
Probably 230 pounds, 235 pounds.
So you'd agree that Katie was much smaller.
Yes,
She wasn't nearly as strong as you were, right?
that is correct.
And you knew that.
Yes,
And you've had some pretty significant medical training, correct?
yes,
You're a board-certified surgeon.
correct.
And in medical school, you had courses in anatomy, right?
Yes,
You're aware of the structures of the neck.
absolutely.
Some of those have been discussed during the course of this trial.
Excuse me?
Some of those have been discussed in the course of this trial.
What?
Discussed.
Discussed,
Testified.
yes.
And you're aware of where the arteries are.
The carotid arteries?
Any arteries in the neck. You're aware of those are, where they are.
Yes,
And you're aware that if the brain isn't getting enough oxygen for any reason, death occurs.
if I'm not intoxicated, I know that, yes.
If you're not intoxicated, you know that if the brain isn't getting enough oxygen for any reason, death occurs.
Yeah, when I'm not drunk, I know all that, yes.
But when you are drunk, you don't know that if your brain doesn't have oxygen, you die.
Probably do.
You probably do what?
Do know. I do know, but anyway, yes,
That's a basic medical concept, right?
yes,
And certainly it's important to protect the airwaves so that suffocation doesn't occur as well, right?
that's correct.
And you know how to perform life-saving measures.
Yes,
You've been trained in CPR.
yes,
And you didn't tell the police, however, that you performed any CPR on Katie, right?
no,
And you were aware in May of 2020 that if you had called 911, that medical professionals could have come and helped Katie as well.
yes,
And you didn't do that.
no,
So when the police met with you at the hospital, they were respectful, that's correct?
yes,
They didn't hide why they were there, right? And in fact, the hospital staff told you before you met with the police that the police wanted to speak with you.
briefly before, yes,
And you chose to go with the police, right?
yes,
This is after 5 o'clock on the 16th, right?
I don't remember exactly what day it was.
All right, it's on Saturday though, right?
It was the day when I woke up from the coma.
All right. And at that point in time, you've been given IV treatments with fluids at the hospital, right?
I do not recall that. I was out.
That would be pretty standard though, when you're admitted to the hospital unresponsive, that just saline IV fluids would be given, right?
I would assume so, yes. I would have done it as a physician, certainly.
Okay. And that would be helpful if you're having a hangover, right? Or if you've drunk too much. That's helpful treatment.
Well, hydration in general is a good treatment, but not for hangover necessarily. No.
There are people who just go get IV treatments after a night of partying, right?
I'm not aware of that. I'm a urologist.
You're not aware of that? Okay. And so when the police said that they wanted to speak with you, you weren't confused about why they were there, right?
I was confused in general what was going on.
But you knew that you had killed Katie, so it made sense that the police were there.
I had caused her death, and I was feeling very guilty and very shameful.
But it made sense that the police would show up, right?
Yes,
Okay. So going into the interview, you knew what this was about. You didn't think it was about a stolen car or anything, did you?
no, I assumed it was about Katie.
All right. And they provided you with Miranda warnings,
I think yes, yes,
and you were provided those in writing, right?
I think I signed something.
You signed something, right?
Yes, yes,
And they were read to you,
I believe so. Yes.
and you understood them, right?
Again, I was not in great condition, but I said
Whether or
okay.
not you were in a great condition, you understood those basic Miranda warnings, right?
I'm not sure.
You're not sure.
No.
Okay.
If I really understood what was explained to me,
You told the police you understood, right?
I signed what they asked me to sign. I don't think I said I understand.
All right, let's look at the form.
Exhibit 280,
Sorry,
280.
thank you. Would you please read out loud what's printed on that form?
The whole thing from the beginning.
The whole thing.
Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Office of the Norfolk District Attorney, State Police Detective Unit, waiver of Miranda. I, IT, make the following voluntary statement to T.R. Koskowski of MA State Police to promise or threats have made to me. No promise or threats have been made to me, and I've been advised of my Miranda rights as follows. Number one, that I have the right to remain silent. Number two, that anything I say can and will be used against me in court of law. Number three, that I have the right to talk to a lawyer or to have a lawyer with me while I'm questioned by the police. Four, that if I cannot afford a lawyer, one will be appointed to represent me before any questioning, if I wish. Five, that if I begin to answer questions, I have the right to stop the questioning at any time. I understand each of these rights and have those rights in mind, waive them voluntarily, and wish to make a statement. Signatures.
And your signature is on that?
Yes, correct.
And that was read out loud to you by Trooper Kotkowski, right?
I believe he did, yes.
And then he said to you, you understand those rights? And you said, yes, sir.
I don't know if I used that word.
Do you still have the transcript?
Sorry, what?
Do you still have the transcript? Page 2?
Page 2?
Yes.
You understand those rights? I said, yes, sir.
All right. And then Trooper Kotkowski followed up and he said, all right, having heard your rights, do you wish to have a conversation with us?
Yes.
And what did you say?
Saying yes.
All right. And in fact, you availed yourself of one of those rights at a certain point in the interview, right?
I did what, sorry?
You took advantage of those rights, correct?
I'm not sure what
You
you're
asked for
asking.
a
for.
break.
I asked for a break, yes.
And what happened?
I went and discharged my bladder.
You got a break?
Yes.
And in the beginning of the interview, you didn't provide a lot of information about where Katie was, right?
Correct.
You didn't tell them that you had killed her.
I don't know if they asked that at that time.
They didn't just start the interview by asking that question, right? But when they said, do you know where she is, what did you say?
I don't know.
And you said that a lot, right?
Yes.
And you remembered what had happened at that point in time when they were speaking with you, right?
Remembered of what, sorry?
You knew what you had done,
I did remember some of what happened, yes.
but you said that you didn't remember an awful lot, right?
I was confused in the beginning of the conversation.
You were confused?
Yes.
All right. Were there things that you actually did remember that you actually just didn't tell the police?
I'm not sure what you're referring to.
Well, you knew that you had killed Katie,
I have caused her death, yes.
and you said that you didn't remember, right?
Probably. Again, I don't recall all the conversation. At some point in time, I admitted everything.
Okay. At some point, you admitted a lot of what happened, but in the beginning, you said that you didn't remember the night, correct?
There was a lot of haziness there, yes.
But what you said to the police is that you didn't remember the night, right?
Again, in the beginning, I wasn't all there. It got better with time.
So you're saying that your memory got better during the conversation?
I think it was 3 hours, so I got more and more out of the hangover.
The hangover improved?
Yes.
At the beginning of the interview, page 17, you were asked whether there was an argument, asked about the argument. Trooper Kotkowski said, tell me about the argument. And at that point, you said you didn't remember, right?
But I'm not sure about that.
Okay. And then you were asked a couple of different times where Katie was. And you said you didn't know.
I'm not sure. I think I asked that most of the time.
I'm sorry?
I think I said I'm not sure.
All right, page 19. Trooper Kokowski says, where can we go find her? And you said, I don't know.
Yes, I see that, yes.
Okay. But you did know. You knew where she was, right?
It came back to me, yes.
No, when you were having that conversation at that point in time, it's about, 28 minutes into the interview, you knew where Katie was, right?
In principle, I did know, yes.
In principle?
I do remember, yes.
Okay.
I did remember,
All right, you just didn't want to talk about it yet, right?
probably.
And a little bit later, page 33, the police asked, Detective Gonski, where can we find her? Again, you said, I don't know.
Yes,
And this is more than an hour into the interview at this point in time, right?
I do not recall. I just knew it was a long time that I was asked.
They asked you how you got the scratches, right?
Yes,
And you said you didn't know about that either.
that's correct.
You said you didn't remember going to the hotel, right?
Yes,
And you said you didn't know whether you were trying to harm yourself.
I didn't remember much of that, correct.
But that's what you said, that you didn't remember whether you were trying to harm yourself.
I didn't remember.
And now you have a clear memory that you were trying to harm yourself.
I got a lot of my memory back, yes,
You got your memory back?
yes.
And there were times when the police were incorrect about their facts, but that didn't confuse you. Like when they talked about using the name Kyle instead of Kurt.
I never I didn't remember, heard of anybody like Kyle, that's correct.
Yeah, you knew that. You knew that they were wrong about that. That didn't confuse you.
I was confused. I don't
But
know
you didn't
any
say,
Kyle.
Oh, yeah, I sent Kyle a text. You knew they were wrong.
I don't think
You said I don't know a Kyle.
Which page is that, please?
Look at page 30.
30?
Page 31.
Yeah. So Trooper Koskowski asked me, Harry, tell us about text you sent to Kyle. And I said, text what?
Yep.
And
then
then
if you
Trooper
go
Kos-
I'm going to stop.
Sorry.
If you go all the way down to page 31, you said, you go back and forth a little bit, and you say, no, there's no friend named Kyle. I don't know a Kyle. And then Detective Gonski says Kurt. She's fiddling around with her notes, and finally she finds it, and she says it's Kurt. You didn't get confused. You knew there was no Kyle. The
Well, there
police
was
were
some confusion before you jumped to that. There was, I do not remember Kyle to who I asked. So there was a lot of confusion first going on until I recognized that I don't know Kyle.
But that confusion didn't lead you to make any false statements or anything, right?
I'm not sure what you're asking right now, sorry.
I'm saying you understood the conversation that you were having, and you knew, I don't know anybody named Kyle.
After several
I didn't
minutes.
send anybody named Kyle a text, right?
After several minutes, I recognized that I don't know Kyle, correct.
And similarly, when the police talked about the woods, you knew Katie wasn't in the woods, right?
No. I mean, I did know that she was not in the woods, correct.
The police were confused because they had been relying on the ping and all that kind of stuff, so they keep talking about the woods. But you knew she's at the pond.
Yes,
And still the police were patient with you.
yes,
They repeatedly requested information, but you understood that that was reasonable considering the circumstances, right?
Can you repeat that question, please?
You understood that them repeatedly requesting information
Yes,
And you understood that they were just doing their job.
yes.
So the first thing that you said regarding assaulting Katie around the neck was that you said you grabbed her around the neck, but you weren't sure. You
What
recall
page was that?
You recall that?
I would need, can I look at the page, please?
Page 44.
So I was asked if I grabbed her, and I said probably. I'm not sure. I think I grabbed her around the neck, I believe, but I'm not sure either.
All right, this is over 2 hours into this interview with the police, and this is the first time that you are talking about grabbing Katie around the neck, right?
I'm not sure how long that was in, but yes, it took a while that I,
And you
Set
did
them.
not say that you grabbed her with one hand, did you?
I wasn't asked.
But you were given a lot of opportunities to speak in this interview, right?
But I knew that I grabbed her with one hand.
I'm not asking you what you knew. I'm asking about what you told the police.
I grabbed her. I think I grabbed her, I said to the police.
You think you grabbed her what?
I said, I'm not sure. I think I grabbed her around the neck, I believe, but I'm not sure either.
And you don't say anything about one hand at this point, right?
At this point, no.
In fact, in the entire interview, you never said one hand, did you?
That was never really specifically asked.
Again, you were given a lot of time to speak, right?
Yes,
There were very long pauses at certain points in time.
yes.
And even at the end of the interview, you were asked, was there anything else that you should be talking about? And you didn't bring it up then, did you?
It was logical to me. I didn't realize that, again, I wasn't asked about the specifics, just told her I grabbed her, I think.
And it's right after you say that you grabbed her around the neck that you asked for the break, right? Look at page 45.
Yes,
And then you got one.
yes.
And then when you came back into the room, there was a different police officer in the room.
I don't recall that, but the transcript says that was somebody else, yeah.
All right. Detective Gonski left, right?
Yeah, she wasn't there,
She wasn't there,
yes.
and Detective Porro was there.
There were two men there, yes.
There were two men. And you told the police that you choked her, right?
What page is that, please?
Do you remember telling the police that you choked her?
I don't recall again the whole interview, sorry, but can I see the page, please?
Sixty-one?
61,
I'm sorry, 56.
56?
Yep.
I said, I think I choked her.
Right? And then you told the police that she passed out.
Right.
And you said she was fighting first, and then I was continuing, and then she passed out, and I realized we went too far probably.
Which is that, please?
56.
56? Yes,
And this interview had gone on at this point in time for almost 2.5 hours. Is that correct?
I really don't recall time.